Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time podcast. We're here for week 2 of the NFL season. Our boy Achilles Rain is with us to get into some picks, some previews, and some mutual picks. All right, whole slate of games to go today. We're still not in the bye section of the season yet. We're ready to get into our mutual picks. 3-2 last week. Are you ready to get back into it and continue our over 500 record in the mutuals?
Yeah, that shouldn't be too hard, seeing as how good we are at picking games.
All right, let's kick it off with a barn burner in the Midwest. The Cincinnati Bengals versus the Chicago Bears. The Bears are 2.5-point favorites in this one. 46 on the over-under. The first half sits at 2.5 as well, with a 22 over-under. Interesting game here. Bengals coming off a big win. Bears, I think we'd say, play a little bit better than expected in that matchup versus the Rams. Are you willing to go for the Bengals to start out the year 2-0? Or are you more thinking the Bears put it together and get a win here?
Well, to be completely honest, I mean, if this was just you and me just talking, I wouldn't even be talking about gambling on this particular game. But seeing as how we have to at least kind of discuss it, I'm not opposed to taking some action on this game. But to be honest with you, I really don't know how I feel about either team just yet. I know that they showed a lot of potential first week of the season, but I mean, it's so early on, and how much of that, was just certain teams not having certain players during the preseason. There's just so many different questions that pop up. I don't know how I feel about this game. Yeah,
I'm sort of sitting on the same way in this. I really liked Cincinnati in the opening game because I thought they had a good matchup getting plus at home versus a Minnesota Viking team that I think we both think probably borders on the poor, and they were a little overvalued in that game. I think the Bears are a little overvalued as 2.5-point favorites. But that being said, I don't think that's a very good line. I don't want the Bears as favorites in this game. I don't quite know what I'm getting from Cincinnati. They were a little bit more disciplined on the offensive side of the ball. Do we get that again, or does, the Bears run defense sort of shut down Joe Mixon? They revert back to habits of throwing the ball too much. And then Burrow gets pressured, and Cincinnati's offense doesn't run quite as smoothly. I don't know about Cincinnati's defense. It looked all right versus the Vikings until those last 2 minutes. I think the Bears probably win this game, but I don't think I'd put a bet on this one at all.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't take any action on it myself. But, when there's certain games that I just don't have an idea about which way to lean towards, I try to go and look at the stats, and not just individual stats, but the team stats in general. And this early in the season, week 2, I mean, there's just not really much to go off of.
Yeah, I will say everybody has fallen in love with my Bengals all of a sudden after a week 1 win. 76% of the money is going in on the Bengals, and 62% of the tickets. So everybody became a Bengals fan all of a sudden after week 1. While I was a Bengals fan in week 1, I'm not quite as big a Bengals fan in week 2. So I think we'll move that one on the cross-off list and move on to our next game. The Houston Texans versus Cleveland Browns. Interesting game here. Houston comes off a nice win and played pretty well in that Jacksonville game. They're going to Cleveland, who had control of the Kansas City Chiefs game until they didn't have control of the Kansas City Chiefs game. This spread sits at 12.5 for the Cleveland Browns. 48 points is the over-under in the first half. It's -7 for Cleveland, and 24 is the over-under in the first half. So really, really big spread here. I do think there's a large mishmash in talent in this game, but from what I saw from the Texans, I do think that offense might be a little spunky. Will it be spunky enough to be able to score points on a defense like the Cleveland Browns? I don't know, but 12.5, quite a large spread here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a little too large for my liking, but with that being said, I was impressed with the way the Texans played last week. We did kind of expect them to have a pretty bad year, but you look at the makeup of that team, it's not the same players that they had there last season. We're talking about guys like Tyrod. It feels like the guys that are there have something to prove. And I know that there's no big sexy name, on that roster. But I think that they're out to try and prove something. And even with that being said, the Cleveland Browns are not the Jaguars, and this is a completely different game. That spread's just too big for me to feel comfortable. So I don't like any action on this particular game.
Yeah, I don't love it either because I think it'll also be sort of a quick game. You saw the Houston Texans run the ball a whole lot, a lot of short passing game. So the clock kept moving on that side. Cleveland's going to come in this game, look at the Texans' poor rush defense and really pound Chubb and Hunt in this one. So, I don't even think there's a good value in taking this because I think the possessions will be limited for two teams who play sort of a limited possession game from what we've seen so far this year. So 12.5 seems too much. Even that first half line of 7, or maybe you think the Browns get out to a hot start, but I want to see how the Browns bounce back from that game in Kansas City. That was a tough loss to take where you're pretty much dominating the game the whole way through. Kansas City turns on the on switch for a 5-minute stretch, and all of a sudden the game's over and you're losing it. A part of me sort of wants to lean Texans here, but I think this has too much of a potential of a blowout on the Cleveland side of things.
Sorry, I forgot to hit that mute button. As I was saying, I can see how you'd be somewhat attracted to that Houston line. They're definitely getting 12.5 points. I mean, it seems really nice. But if it wasn't for that Cleveland defense, which at least seems somewhat scary on paper, I'd be maybe a little, reluctant to go against it. But as it sits, I just think it's too far to take Cleveland. And I just think that Cleveland defense is too good to take Houston.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed this week is they seem to juice these numbers up a little quicker than they usually do. I mean, we saw it last week where we were getting San Francisco, LA, a couple of those other teams. We were getting them, hovering around that touchdown line. And when I was writing down these to send to you, I just noticed that they seem to spike them, a little bit quicker into that double-digit territory. I know they got burned by a couple of them. They sort of got burned on that Niners one. They sort of didn't because it moved up to 9.5, but it opened, in that 7 territory. So I did notice they seem to spike these a little quicker on the high side than they usually do, waiting a couple weeks.
Well, yeah, I mean, and even week to week, it seems like they're kind of really acting on moving those lines really quickly. You know how I am. I like to get in on these opening lines pretty early. When I tried to get into this Thursday night football game, I couldn't really parlay it because they had changed the number right as I was trying to, place my bet. So it locked me out from parlaying it, but I could bet it as a single game, which, by the way, I was able to hit.
Yeah, definitely so. All right. So I think we're starting off with 2 cross-offs to start the week. This one will be interesting. I'm curious on your thoughts about this one. Rams going on the road early to Indianapolis. Indianapolis 3 and getting 3.5 points, 47 on the over-under. The first half sits at 3. The over-under on that one sits at 23.5. Pretty testing road trip to start the season here. The Colts probably don't want to start out 0-2 at home. I'm curious what you think of the Rams going here in the road. Do you think they roll in this one, or do you think this will be a pretty tight game here?
I'm actually looking forward to this game. I think this is going to be one of the more entertaining games. Potential playoff contenders from each conference in this particular matchup. And you have a team last week at the Rams. So their defense, although their pass defense was really good, and I think that, they gave up a few plays, but overall I think they're pretty good. Their run defense was a little suspect to me. And when you look at the other side of the ball with Indianapolis, I think that their strong suit is their run game, whether it be passing to the halfbacks or just, putting the big guys up front and just, having those run backs get right behind them, trying to find holes. I think that's their strong suit. So And the fact that Indianapolis also has a pretty decent defense, going up against what we assume to be a pretty good Rams offense, I think this has the potential to be one of the games of the weeks.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm really curious to see how that you mentioned it. The Rams defense matches up against the rushing attack of Indianapolis. Are they going to scheme it where they were sort of giving up, the rushing attack? That seems like probably not the greatest idea versus a Colts team. I mean, I can understand that scheme versus the Chicago Bears. You don't think they're going to be able to beat you deep. As long as you sort of bend but don't break and contain, you're probably okay there. But Indianapolis, I think, would love that. If you just let the offense have the ball, chew up the clock, and shorten this game, I think that would really benefit them. So I'm curious to see how the Rams come into this game scheme-wise. Do they go a little bit more aggressive style play, or is it, first couple weeks of the season, they sort of just let it go and play their way sort of into their defense? I'm curious about this Colts defense. Last year it was a very solid defense. They opened up the season versus the Seahawks. You don't know, maybe that's just a bad off game. They roll, but they gave up a couple deep plays in that one. The defense didn't look all that strong. Does that continue, or do they sort of find themselves in this game? So I'm really curious about this one on the line, 3.5. Any action on this, or is it sort of I want to see what the Rams look like on the road. I want to see what the Rams look like on the defensive side, on the rushing attack. And I want to see what the Colts sort of really are on defense and offense in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. For me, this is the moment that's going to basically decide how I'm going to bet on each team respectively going forward. As we said, the Colts, I believe their strong suit is the running game. And if the Rams can somehow manage to stifle them and, keep them contained, then it'll show me that the Rams are probably going to be the type of team that are going to play to their opponent's style of offense, and vice versa also. The Colts, they didn't really show what we expected last week, but how much of that had to be with, rust just from week one. All this stuff remains to be seen, but I think to me, this is more a game that I'm going to stay away from and just kind of really try and analyze and break down.
Yeah, definitely so. I think this one's probably a stay away as well. All right, we're going Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. The Bills are 3.5 points favorites in this one. 47 points is the over-under. First half sits at 2.5 and 23.5 as the over-under in that one. Interesting game. Probably depends what you think of the Bills and how they played in that Pittsburgh game. I sort of ignore that. But going down to Miami, what do you make of Miami? Do you think the Bills sort of get their offense rolling here, or do you think this Miami team probably good enough to at least hang with the Bills in this one?
I being a divisional opponent, I've always said it, and I'll continue to say it till I'm blue in the face. I think divisional opponents know each other so well because they play each other year in and year out, a couple times a year, that even if a team is bad and the other team is good, I think that it still has the possibility to be at least a competitive matchup. With all that being said, I don't think that the Dolphins are really pushovers. I think that they're probably not getting the respect that they deserve. We saw last season how well they did, even though they kept flying under the radar pretty much all season long. And it seems like that's kind of what they're doing this year. My biggest concern is with, the quarterback of the Dolphins. All day long, as I'm watching sports media, I keep hearing talk about the potential to send him somewhere else, the potential to bring Watson in, all these different scenarios. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, I know that he doesn't, really wow you with his flashy numbers or his plays, but, he's done pretty well since he's been there. I mean, they're not, astronomical numbers, but you got to remember he's in year 2. This is the second year. We're in the second week. We haven't even started the second week for them. So I think they can keep up with the Bills, but I think this game is too important for the Bills. To go down, 0-2 against the Dolphins within your division, I think it's really huge. It's something they don't want to get into, which is one of the reasons why I think at first I wasn't sold on it. As I'm thinking more about it, I'm kind of leaning towards the Bills. I think that this game is really important for them.
Yeah, I do think the Bills maybe get on track in this one a little bit. My concern lies with that line. We talked about it a couple games ago where I think these lines got a little bit bloated a little sooner than I thought. I think if this set at like Bills at 2, I think I'd be a lot more aggressive than Bills at 3.5 here. This feels like a game where the Bills sort of play better, but the Dolphins hang around, which they tend to do, much like in that New England game where it wasn't exactly a pretty fest on how the Dolphins go about winning a game, but they found a way to win the game. And that's essentially what they've been doing for, now 3 years under Brian Flores. It's not something you look at and go, oh, wow, that team's really, really great. But they have the win next to their name. So that 3.5 number worries me. I think you could maybe talk me into that 2.5 number in the first half, thinking the Bills come out aggressive and sort of try to put this game away early. They were up 10-0 on the Steelers at halftime before, a couple special teams plays blocked it. I just don't know if I'm willing to go at that 3.5 number on the road this early in the season in a division game, but maybe with the number at 2.5 in the first half, I could look into it. But this isn't a game I love. You know how I hate road favorites, and then you pile on road favorites in a division game in week 2. Just seems like a recipe for losses.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. Like I said, I'm just like now, literally as we're talking, I'm talking myself into taking the Bills just because of how important this game's going to be for them.
Yeah. All right. We might come back to that one, see what we got as we go down the slate here. Next up, interesting game. New England Patriots go to the New York Jets. And speaking of lines, I thought were a little bit bloated here. Jets, the Patriots 6-point road favorites after losing at home to Miami. The number sits at 43 in the over-under. Once again, the Patriots over-under number sits low, so they don't think they're scoring points, but they think they're covering a 6-point spread. The half line is 3 points for the Patriots, 21 on the over-under. I'm curious here what you think of the Patriots. Do you think they come in here and blow this game out? I don't have a great read on the Jets. I thought they played okay in Carolina. It's their opening home game, so I think that gives them a little bit of a boost. But we mentioned it in our review show that they lost, their first-round offensive lineman, so protection might not be a bit of an issue. But I have a couple questions about that Patriots secondary. And I do think this Jets team, while not a good team, is one of those teams that's going to cover games annoyingly, a little bit sans the Jaguars last year, where they don't win a lot of games, but they're going to get offensive numbers and put a couple points on the board there late and mess up these crooked numbers. So I'm curious what your thoughts on this game are.
For me, I know that New England has showed some, they're susceptible to, the pass. Their secondary didn't look all that great last week, but regardless, I think that you hire a coach like Bill Belichick and you keep a coach like Bill Belichick for a couple of reasons. It doesn't really matter what the team looks like on paper, how they looked the last week. You never know what you're going to get from a Bill Belichick defense. He tends to really put together really good game plans. Going up against a rookie, we all know the history that Bill Belichick has versus rookies in the NFL, and it's not good for the rookies. I'll say that. The concern to me is the New England offense. They did enough last week, but again, it's just week 1. It's hard for me to really, stand firm on where these teams sit because what we have, the information, is just so minimal that all these games give me a little bit of pause, but especially this one, it feels like the line's a little bit bloated. Yeah,
that's where my concern comes in. You just look at the thought process of the over-under. Sits at 43. So that tells me you think the Patriots are scoring probably in the low 20s to high teens like they did last week. So you're saying they're covering a 6-point spread when they're going to score between 17 and, 23 points. That's pretty much saying the Jets are scoring one time at best. And, I get a little shaky with that, especially with the fact that the Patriots also are starting a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
And so I do think the Patriots will win this game, but that number is just it seemed ridiculous to me when I wrote it down. So I don't know what your thoughts on this game are, but I think this one moves to a pass as well on our mutuals.
Yeah, again, I think that this number is bloated for, as I said earlier, everyone just assumes that Bill Belichick is going to play mind games with the rookie quarterback, but you also have to take into account they've got a rookie quarterback themselves.
Yeah. All right. Next up, I'm really curious your thoughts on this game. San Francisco 49ers looked like a dominant team for three and
3/4
3 3/4 of a football game, and then that I don't even know if it was a fourth. The preceding last 3 minutes of said football game, they gave up a lot of points quickly. They go to the Eagles, who looked really, really good here. San Francisco comes in as 3-point favorites on the road on this one. This is another one of there are a couple of them where teams are on a 2-game road trip here to start out the year. So they go Detroit to Philadelphia. They're 3-point favorites. 49 is the over-under. First half sits at 2.5 and 23.5 on the over-under total. I'm curious how you think this game is going to go, because I don't really have a feel on this one, especially after what we saw from Philadelphia in that opening week.
I'll tell you what, I wasn't super confident about it, but I did feel good about the 49ers first half spread. I think that the 49ers are a much better team than the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know Philadelphia won last week, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but how much of that had to do with the fact that they were going up against the Falcons defense? That's got to count for something, because even though the Falcons defense played really good towards the end of last year, they're not a good defense. So with that being said, what's I believe it's 2.5, he said, for the half?
The first half line was 2.5 for the Niners. Yes.
Yeah, I can definitely see a scenario where the 49ers are leading by at least a field goal going into half, especially how hot they started last game. If they can start like that, I think they can get far ahead enough to where you're not running into a similar issue like you did with the Lions.
Yeah. We also need to find out your true hatred for the Philadelphia Eagles, who you have now picked against 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, I'm open to that, because I do think the Niners, really, really played well in that Detroit Lions game, and it was a bit of a fluke at how they shut down. The only thing I worry about a little bit is, I mentioned it, this is their second week on a road to start the season. I do wonder if that affects them at all. Now, weather doesn't come into play quite this early in the season, so it should be fine weather-wise in Philadelphia. But I'd be willing to mark down the Niners on that first half line as a 2.5 and see if we can come up with 5 here. I'm just curious how this game really plays out. I'm curious what the Niners do. Was it a fluke that the defense all of a sudden started to get shredded by Jared Goff and that Lions team, or was it, something more to it than that? So we'll see how this game goes. We'll mark down first half 2.5, and we'll see what we got coming up. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this number really surprised me. I don't understand this number. The Steelers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. 47 on the over/under. First half 3.5 for the Steelers, and 23.5 for the game. I know it's a short week for the Raiders. That's about all I can say, but I think the Steelers defense is elite, but you're telling me this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, which really didn't even score a point theoretically versus Buffalo, is going to cover a 6.5-point line. I really like the Raiders in this one. And from what I saw on the offense, I don't know if they can go in there and win, but 6.5 just seemed really, really big on the Steelers side of things. I'm curious what you think of this.
If it wasn't for my, and I almost said for my disdain of the Raiders, if it wasn't for my insecurities with the Raiders, that's a better word. With them, I just don't know what I'm getting. It seems like, like this last game with the Ravens, I thought they were going to lose that game just based off the way they were performing for basically most of that game. And it wasn't until that late in that second half when they really kind of got their motor going, and then they seemed like a well-oiled machine. And I just don't know if we can get that, especially like you said, a short week. I don't know. I'm a little weary about it. Like you could definitely sell me on it, but I'm definitely a little cautious.
My only thing, I just look at this and I look at the Pittsburgh offense, and if you look at the grades,
You don't have to sell me on that. I completely agree with you. I don't understand how that offense is going to put up that many points.
that's my main glaring thing, because I don't love the short week coming in on a early morning game, early afternoon game, but Pittsburgh's offense graded out as the worst offense in the league last week, and then you come right around and give them a 6.5 point spread when we don't know if Ben can throw. Nothing showed that Najee Harris was going to be capable of running a ball behind that offensive line. So it's more a play just on the number than on how I think the game is going to go. I think this Las Vegas Raiders offense is really, really good. What I think of their defense, I don't know. It seemed good enough to bend and not break, and it forced enough turnovers in that Raiders game to keep it in the game. But then again, I don't know if the Steelers are capable of really putting that kind of danger in it. So this was more just this line seems very, very large for a team that we don't even know who can score, unless you're counting on special team scores and defensive turnovers to get the team scores. It just seems like a large spread overall.
Yeah, and you know what? Just so you know, I'm actually writing it down as mutual right now. The Raiders plus 6.5. But the one thing that does concern me about the Raiders on offense is their inability to really spread the ball out early on. It seemed like pretty much play after play, they just kept going to their big tight end. And I understand why he's such a big weapon, but Pittsburgh defense, you can't really, tip your hat to them because they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah. All right. We'll go to the next game. We'll mark down the Raiders in our questions category. We got 3 in there right now. We'll move to the Saints versus the Panthers. Saints 3.5 point favorites on the road here. I thought that was interesting considering they were not favorites last week. And now they go on the road, and all of a sudden we love them. 3.5 point favorites versus the Carolina Panthers. 44.5 is the over under. First half is a 3 point line. 22.5 is the over under. What do you make of this game? Carolina won. I don't think looked great. The Saints won and looked great. Is it that simple in week 2? The Saints looked awesome. They're going to continue rolling, and Carolina played a adequate game, but did not look great. Or is it just good opening game and the Saints have their same woes on the road that they typically do?
Well, I don't think it's that easy, especially when you're talking about divisional opponents. These teams know each other pretty well. With that being said, Christian McCaffrey last week, I was really impressed. Now, I was a little upset because I was going up against him in fantasy, but that's a whole nother story. I was really impressed with how he looked in his return. He seemed to be a weapon both, through the ground and through the air as he was, when he was fully healthy. That being said, I think Carolina has a better chance of trying to control the pace of the game. Green Bay is known to be more, of an air raid type offense where that at least while you have Aaron Rodgers on the field, you're going to give him the opportunity to throw the ball. They don't run the ball a lot. And I think the opposite could be said about Carolina. So they have the chance to at least somewhat try and control the game. I still think the Saints are a much better team, and I still think they're going to come out on top. But to take a divisional opponent, road favorite, gives me a little bit of a pause.
Yeah, I think that's where I sit. I asked myself 2 questions in this game. How much do I believe in that Saints defense after what we saw in week 1? How much of that was Green Bay? How much of that was New Orleans? And then I loved how Christian McCaffrey looked. I'm not questioning that. I think we're getting good McCaffrey. I think the question comes, how real is Sam Darnold? Now, you don't need him to be, a superstar in this game, but what you need is what we got last week versus the Jets. No turnovers, simple passes. If it
And
was
make plays
there,
when you have to.
yeah. When it was there, hit Robbie Anderson over the top. When it's there, hit DJ Moore. When it's there, check down to Christian McCaffrey and let him work. Do we get that same Sam Darnold this week versus a much, much upgraded team in the Saints? Or do we get the revert back to what we saw in the Jets, where turnovers occur? And that's where I think this number, could get hurt. If turnovers happen, the Saints roll in this one. If we get that Sam Darnold that we got last week, I think this number is pretty solid at 3.5 at home in a division. I think this is a 3-point game, one way or the other, and someone's driving down to win this game in that one.
Yeah, I definitely can see that scenario playing out.
All right. So I think we probably put Carolina maybe in the maybe category with the rest of our sort of couple picks. Definitely not as definitive this week as we were last week. I think we had 3 or 4 that we really, really liked starting off the bat last week. And this week, we're in a lot of him and haw maybes here. So,
you can't really blame us. We were excited for kickoff. I mean, it was week 1. And of course, after seeing how certain people did, not pointing any fingers, we slowed down a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Denver Broncos at the Jacksonville Jaguars. This number really, really piqued my interest. Jacksonville getting 6 points in this one, 45 over under first half, plus 3, 22.5. And this is where I get confused here. Last week, week 1, they thought Jacksonville was a 3-point favorite on the road in Houston. Then this week they come back, and now they're a 6-point dog at home. So I get week 1. Jacksonville looked awful, and Denver looked pretty good at the Giants. But I don't understand this movement where one week you're a 3-point road favorite, and the very next week, now you're getting 6 as a home dog. So I know the mismatch here. Denver is the much better team. I do wonder how much that Judy going out will affect them. But what do you make of this game?
I think the Judy loss is going to affect them. I don't think it's going to be drastic enough to where you're going to start losing games because of it. But I think it's drastic enough to make a difference where certain guys are definitely going to have to step up now. Honestly, I don't know if Denver's for real. I know that I've seen the potential in them, and I do think that, as long as their quarterback plays a solid, mistake-free type of game, he doesn't have to wow you with the numbers. He's just got to manage the game properly. That defense can play with just about anybody when, they're in their right mindset, and that running attack can be pretty deadly. So I do think Denver's a better team. I just don't know where they're at right now mentally. And that's the only part that scares me.
Yeah. The other thing I talked about a little earlier, this is back-to-back road trip for Denver. So they opened in New York, then, theoretically flew back to Denver, did their practice, and now flying back to Jacksonville. So that's essentially 2 cross-country road trips in 2 weeks to start the season. I think that has a little bit of effect as well. I don't know if you're aggressive enough to hammer the Jags on our mutuals quite yet, especially after what you saw last week. But that number just seemed real aggressive, especially considering in week 1 they were thought so highly of the Jags that they made them 3-point favorites on the road. But this might be just one of those games that we mark off like we did earlier in a sort of Bengals Bears type matchup.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly how I feel about this game. But just so you know, I did write down Jags +6, and next to it I put Champ Chesterfield.
Well, you keep that in mind when we get to our individual picks later in the program. All right, we'll move on to the next game. Interesting game here in the Minnesota Vikings at the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona 3.5-point favorites at home here. 50.5 over under on this one. First half sits at -3, over under sits at 24 in this one. So what do you think, Arizona? Can they come back and be consistent? What are you taking from that Minnesota disaster at Cincinnati, I think, are the questions in this one. I thought the 3.5 number was a little bit high. But you definitely could talk me into it. I was looking more at the first half numbers here. I liked the -3. And once again, I liked that 24 in the first half over under as well. I think this Arizona team is one of those teams that's always sort of going to get off to a hot start in the first half. So I liked my first half numbers of -3 and 24 for Arizona. I don't know if I love that 3.5 number, but I'm curious what you think of these two teams after week one.
I'm not happy about that 3.5. I would have liked it better at 2.5. Said every single gambler in history.
Yes.
But honestly, I think that Arizona is the much better team here. And as you mentioned, if we follow trends, they do have a tendency to start off really hot, especially early on in the season while everybody's fresh and healthy. If Minnesota plays the way they played last week, I know that offensive line wasn't horrible, but it wasn't good enough. And if they play the way they did last week, this defensive unit of the Cardinals, which I'm actually more impressed with than the offense, is going to get after them. And if that's the case, then I think this 3.5 is going to be easily covered because I think if they get going, Arizona's just that much better.
Yeah, I think the only real question with me comes with Kyler and Cliff. Do we get a consistent Kyler Murray? You brought it up a little bit in our review show. He made some of those throws and they were completed versus a very porous Tennessee Titans defense. Do those same passes get completed here versus the Minnesota Vikings, who I don't think we think has a great defense, but it's certainly an upgrade over the Tennessee Titans defense.
Sorry, yes. Dynamite.
And then, how does Kingsbury react to this? I think we both question what sort of coach he is, but has Minnesota given up on the season totally? I think Arizona is the way to go here. So I like the first half 3 and the 24, but if you like the 3.5, I'm willing to go on that one as well.
Well, honestly, I kind of like the half and the half spread, but I'm not staying away from that full game spread. I don't think it's far off, especially like I said, if defensively they keep playing the way they did last week, and offensively they can at least do something against a much better defense than the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, the thing I worry about on that 3.5 number is we get our token Kirk Cousins fourth quarter number padding game. So it's probably like a 24-3 game going into the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden Kirk Cousins throws 2 touchdown passes in the last 8 minutes of the game. And then we're all pumped up and happy, and the game ends up like 24-21 because Kirk Cousins has 25 touchdowns and no interceptions. Granted, he's 0-12 on the season, but his numbers look flashy and good. But that's why I sort of like this first half number. Now, the over-under first half number, 24, it hit last week for the Cardinals, but I think that was with an offense we probably trust a little bit better in Tennessee. Now, Arizona hit it themselves. Do you think this Viking offense can score enough? We'd probably need 7 to 10 points from the Minnesota Vikings offense in that first half. Do you think we can get that to hit that 24 number?
As explosive as I think this Minnesota Vikings offense has the potential being, I don't think they're better offense than, Tennessee is. I don't know how much of, Tennessee's issues last week were with the fact that it was week 1, but it does give me a little bit of pause. Can they put up 10 points against this Cardinals defense, especially if they're humming on all mortars? I don't think they can, which is why the over under for half scares me a little bit.
All right. What if we just go Cardinals -3 first half and make that our first really agreed upon mutuals in the show so far?
Okay, I like that.
All right. Arizona first half -3, our first true mutuals of the week. All right. This next one, you are to blame for this. And you are to blame when I talk you into it here in a second.
Oh, no.
The Atlanta Falcons are going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay is a 12-point favorite in this game. The over-under sits at 52. The first half sits at -7, and the over-under in the half line sits at 26.5. I don't know what to say on the side of things of Atlanta. The defense looked atrocious. The offense somehow looked more atrocious than the terrible defense. But they do have a history of playing Tampa Bay very well, even the Tom Brady Tampa Bay. It is a division game. It is 12 points, which seems like an awful lot. I think Atlanta can keep this game closer than it appears, but they were terrible last week. So you could also tell me this Atlanta team is terrible, but you got me back together with them, and now I have to ride them till they get me some wins.
I almost feel the same way about the Falcons as you do. I almost want to take them just for a couple of reasons. One, divisional opponent, as I always say, and I keep saying over and over again like a broken record, divisional opponents know each other better, so they tend to play each other tougher. That's not to say that there's no chance the Bucs cover the spread. Of course there is. They're a much better team, especially if you compare week 1 Bucs versus week 1 Falcons. And but I mean, 12 points is a lot, especially for a divisional game. Honestly, they've got to hit at some point. So I wouldn't be opposed to going with Atlanta getting 12 here.
All right. I think we're going to come up on our second mutual here. I think we're going with Atlanta plus the 12. We're going to ride these boys until they really crush our souls. I do think their offense will be better this week. At least I hope so.
It has to be. Can't be any worse.
Well, I don't know. They could have missed both field goals to start out the game and then proceed to never cross the 50-yard line.
Well, you got to look at it like this. Even if their offense plays like they did last week and we get the same Bucs defense from last week, I mean, they gave, 29 points to the Cowboys? Yeah. So, I mean, they got a shot to at least score a touchdown.
Yeah, I just think Atlanta will be a little bit better this week. You mentioned in division. I think that'll be tough. And I think Tampa Bay, they're going to get these bloated spreads all year long. So it's going to be really hard to want to take them pretty much all year long. You saw it in that Dallas game. That spread got up to 9-10 points in that one. This one's already up to 12. I mean, they jumped really quick on the money on here on Tampa Bay. So as bad as Atlanta looked, I think they have a better game this week, and I like the 12 there. So we're on back-to-back mutuals to start the year, and back-to-back weeks with the Atlanta Falcons. So
I am putting an asterisk next to it, and it just says, "Champ convinced me."
Well, that's fine because this one might come up later in our picks as well. All right, next game up, really interesting game here. Dallas Cowboys at the San Diego Chargers. Chargers are 3.5-point favorites. That line stunned me. 55 points is the over-under. I don't know if I can convince you on that one. That's a lot of points to start out this early in the week. First half, 2.5, 27 over-under in the first half here. Couple key things on the Dallas side of things. Another offensive lineman is out. I do think Zach Martin will be back this week, but Dallas lost another offensive lineman, and the more concerning one was DeMarcus Lawrence broke his foot in practice. So their best defensive player on a defense that is not very good is no longer there. That has me a little concerned about the Dallas defense. That being said, the San Diego Chargers as a 3.5-point favorite.
Los Angeles Chargers.
Oh, yes.
Let's not – they won last week. Let's not butcher.
I think that's going to be my bigger point here. They're playing in the Rams Stadium. There is no home field advantage here. So whatever you're trying to factor in as a home field advantage, this stadium is going to be filled with Dallas Cowboy fans. There will be no Charger fans there. So I don't put anything there. I think the Chargers are the better team here. I think they're going to score a lot of points, but I think this Dallas team is going to score a lot of points too. And 3.5 just seems like Whoa, why is that number so high? Sort of line. So I'm curious what you make of this game.
See, I do think that the Chargers are a much better team than the Cowboys are. I just because I believe they're a more complete team. That being said, you saw what the Cowboys did to Tampa Bay last week. No one thought that they'd be able to keep up with them, and they were going tit for tat with them. But their defense is just horrible. And if I really had to put some money on it, I would lean more towards the Chargers. But as you said, it's a home game without home field advantage. And to be fair, if it was Cowboys Rams, there'd probably still be a lot of Cowboy fans in that stadium, even though I believe the Rams have a larger fan base in LA. I don't know. I'm probably just going to stay away from this game just because I don't really know what to expect from either or. The Cowboys, the only way I can see them winning this game is if they turn into a shootout. They did that last week. They could do this. They have the weapons to do it on offense. They lost an offensive tackle, as you said, and then they lost a defensive player. I don't know. It's a lot of variables. I don't like that hook. And I again, as much as I think the Chargers are a better team, I just don't know what to expect from either or right now.
Yeah, I think that hook's what scares me a whole lot. That 3.5 just really makes me nervous. You'll be nice to know that I typed down San Diego Chargers as well on my sheet as I'm
really?
copying the line from Ben.
You did. So you couldn't even get it right even when you were looking at the actual name?
So altogether, their branding as the Los Angeles Chargers, I must say, 4 years into their move, has not stuck because I don't think anybody looks at this team and thinks Los Angeles Chargers. So way to go there, branding department. Well, yes, that one's a little easier because at least at one point in time, they were branded the LA Rams before they went to St. Louis. So I don't know if ever I will get used to saying Los Angeles Chargers, but it's nice to know I typed it down also out of as I'm staring at this thing.
I just noticed that as you mentioned it.
So the 3.5 seems a little bit big. This over under on the 55. It would take a very, very big swallow here. But that being said, I think the Chargers can get to 30 pretty easy here. And I find it difficult that you could hold the Cowboys under about 24. So as big as it is and the number is as it's trying to scare you there, which I think is its intent, I do think there's some value there because I do think this game is played between the probably 30-point mark. So I think actually I think 58 probably would be a good over-under number on this game. So I sort of like that 55 on the over-under, but it is very high. I'm curious your thoughts on this one.
I personally think it's really high. And I know that, last week, San Diego, there I go. You see, you got me doing it now. The LA Chargers, they gave up only 16 points. Grant, this was to a Fitzpatrick-less, Washington football team. And the Chargers and Tampa Bay combined for 60 points. I mean, I guess you can sell me on it. I'm not crazy about it. I think it's kind of high, but you could definitely sell me on it.
Dallas doesn't have a defense, and they score a lot of points. The Chargers have really good offense. We don't know if they have a defense, and I just think 58, like by week 6, 7, 8. I think if this matchup occurred, I think this number gets to 58. So I think there's value there in the 55. I think it's put there to scare you because they think you'll be scared off by the 55.
Okay, so we're taking the over?
We're taking the over 55.
Okay.
Think how exciting that will be. You just get to cheer points nonstop in that game.
Wow. Okay.
All right. We're on a good roll here. We got Arizona, Minnesota first half over 24. We got the Atlanta Falcons and we got the over 55 in Dallas. This is a good lineup so far for us. All right, next up, Tennessee Titans versus Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks 6-point favorites here. Over under sits at 54. First half, 3.5 for the Seahawks, 26.5 for the first half over under. All right, what do you make of this game? Seahawks looked great in week 1. Tennessee Titans looked terrible in week 1. Does that trend continue, or do we get some more evening out here on the Tennessee Titans, Seattle Seahawks? Pretty big number in this one. I don't think this number would have been that last week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of this spread. I believe that the Seahawks, as good as they are, and as good as they looked last week, they've definitely had a track record over the last couple of seasons of being susceptible defensively, especially last season where they were actually one of the worst defenses for a long stretch of the season. And Tennessee is obviously, last week they didn't show it, but, they have done it. They've done it for several seasons. They've been one of the most potent offenses in the league. They've got one of the best running backs, which seems to be slowing down a little bit. I don't know if that's a thing we can expect to happen all season long. They've got some really great weapons on the outside. And, even their quarterback, is a solid quarterback. Some people would even argue that he had the potential to be MVP prior to last week. But I don't know. I kind of like Seattle here. I know that it's a large spread, but I feel like if their defense can at least slow down the Titans offense, which we actually saw happen last week, I feel like Seattle can roll in this one, just because I do think Tennessee's defense has the potential to be that porous throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the other side here. I not on the Tennessee Titans defensive side of things, but I think that Seattle Seahawks defense will struggle versus Tennessee Titans offense. I think Tennessee's offense will come around in this game a little bit, but I will admit it makes me a little nervous. Tennessee going up to Seattle, that's a really difficult place to play there. So I think the number's too big for Seattle. But you seem to like Seattle.
What about that 3.5? I know it's 3.5, but
I can see that. It's just
Seattle's at home. Fans are back.
I know.
12th man.
I should probably mention before we get into our picks, someone might be writing the Tennessee Titans this week as a bounce back candidate.
Let's move on from this game.
I know we aren't live, but I think the Dynamite David felt a tremble in the force as we were discussing this. But so I'm a little bullish on the Tennessee Titans on this one. I just think the offense will be better. I think this will be a little bit more of a shootout than the Arizona Cardinals game. They'll find their way. But if you're bullish on the Seattle Seahawks, you could convince me a little bit there. But I just think these lines are too big. I think we got a little bit of an overreaction for what Seattle did in that opening week and what Tennessee did in that opening week.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to put the Titans at +6 on the maybe column.
All right. Next up, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens. Ravens 3.5-point dogs in this game. 54.5 is the over under. First half at +2.5 and half 27.5 over under. This looks to be a pretty entertaining game. But I don't really have a good feel on how this game's going to play out. I'm curious on what you think about the Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens here.
When I was looking at these lines, I was really enamored with that half. What was it at 2.5?
Yes, 2.5.
2.5. Yes, 2.5. I was really liking it, especially when I'm sitting there comparing. I'm thinking Baltimore's been losing guys left and right. They're probably a little demoralized from, their almost victory, now defeat, during Monday Night Football against the Raiders. And you're going up against the Chiefs team that really seemed to kind of turn it on towards the end of the game last week. And I kind of like the Chiefs for that first half one, but it does give me a little bit of pause that they've had slow starts since pretty much the beginning of last season. Seems like they don't really turn it on until they have to at the very end. And that's the only issue with me with that 2.5.
Yeah. The other thing here is I don't think this is a good betting game. I don't think the Chiefs are good to bet on because, one, everybody bets on the Chiefs because everybody loves the Chiefs. And two, it just seems like I don't know what we're getting from Baltimore. Do they bounce back off that tough Raiders loss? Do they need more time to sort of find their offense in here? And then, I was looking up stuff on the Chiefs because, I hadn't been winning money on them, and I don't think a lot of people had. And then I came across this. So starting in November of last year, what do you think the Chiefs' record is against the spread?
I think that they're probably like at 90%.
They are 1-10-1 against the spread.
Oof. Wow.
Since November. So they have covered one time since November of last year.
I mean, I know that, to be fair, if I'm not mistaken, as I'm trying to remember last season, I believe a lot of those games were at some point even double-digit spreads.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't, it was at least in the high single digits.
Yes, they were. But that's what concerns me about betting on the Chiefs. They win games, but they do their little thing like they did versus Cleveland where it's,
They
what's
get too
wrong
cute
with,
sometimes.
yeah, what's wrong with the Chiefs? And then it's 5 minutes of brilliance, and then you're like, oh, and then it's a win, but it's not a cover. So that's what has me scared here. Until I see the Chiefs start blowing games out again like they were doing, 2 years ago, and I get a feel for Baltimore. I think that's more.
That's the biggest question mark.
I don't have a feel for Baltimore yet. I need to see more games. So I was sort of in the stay away category in this one. Do you have a hard feel on this one? Do you like that first half a whole lot?
I don't. I mean, I kind of might like it a little more for individual reasons, but I think it's safe to move on if you're not crazy about them.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of bloated lines, this
Yes.
next one really stunned me a little bit. I had to double check. I thought I might have been on an alternate line space in this one, but Detroit goes to Green Bay. 11.5 for a team who scored 3 points last week and was murdered by the Saints. Detroit, Green Bay, 11.5, 48 over under first half, 6.5, and 24.5. Lions were pretty bad, we mentioned in that Niners game until the last couple minutes, but they showed they were capable of doing some offense. Green Bay was atrocious. They just put another defensive player, Zadarius Smith, on IR because of back issues. There is zero chance I'm touching Green Bay at 11.5 here. That just seems ridiculous, even if they are capable of blowing out the Lions. What do you make of this? Where do you think this line comes from? And do you have a feel either way on this?
I don't have a feel. I'll tell you where I think this line comes from. I think this line is a little bit mixed in with last season's Green Bay offense and the MVP of the league in Aaron Rodgers, and the way that a lot of us probably still have Detroit in our minds, which was almost coming back and beating the Niners. What that line fails to mention is the fact that they showed no offense for about 3.5 quarters, and then they finally turned it on when in actuality, what really probably happened was that San Francisco probably just completely laid down and thought the game was over. So I'm not touching Green Bay. I do think their offense is going to bounce back. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers-led offense can, have this type of a start for a couple weeks consecutively. I think they're going to bounce back. But even with that being said, a division opponent, all the hype, 12.5. No, I'm staying away. 11.5, whatever it was.
Yeah, 11.5 just seemed ridiculous to me. I don't know. First half, 6.5. Detroit got murdered there, but still, it just seems really, really high for a Packers team where we saw absolutely nothing from in week one. I at least need to see some life before I start throwing around big money spreads. And I don't know. I mentioned it like the Titans. At least there's a track record there of success. I don't know if I can talk myself into taking the spread side of things for the Detroit Lions. So when I was typing this game, I was just like, this is an automatic cross off here.
No, definitely. I don't want any part of it. I will say this, I do think that Aaron Rodgers knows the Lions well enough to, feel comfortable enough. This might be the game he needs to kind of get that offense kick-started.
Yeah. All right. So we got 3 games here. We got the first half of Arizona at -3. We got the Atlanta Falcons at +12, and we got the over in the Dallas Cowboys San Diego Chargers game. So we need 2 more.
I thought we had 5 mutuals, so I must have been random wrong.
Well, we had some others that we were going to go over. So
Okay.
we got the 2.5 line for the Bills in the Dolphins game. We have the 2.5 line for the Niners in the Philly game. The Las Vegas Raiders at +6.5. We had circled as a maybe. I just did find out that Jacobs had been ruled out for that game for the Las Vegas Raiders. They do have Kenyon Drake as a backup, but that does make me a little bit more leery on that one, considering how much I do like Josh Jacobs in that game. We had Panthers circled at +3.5 in that one. And then
Titans
I think
+6.
And then we had a little bit the Tennessee Titans +6. So of those, I think the Buffalo Bills -2.5. I kind of liked that. I was sort of leaning Buffalo Bills way, but I'm curious about that one. Niners, Eagles, I'm a little bit more nervous about. Carolina, I'm sort of bullish on, but I'm curious where your favorite picks lie in this mutual one.
Honestly, my favorite ones are the ones that we already have pretty much crossed off as definites. I think I'm going to leave these last 2 picks up to you. I'm going to let the host take care of this.
I think we go Buffalo Bills first half -2.5 on that one. And then we stick with our Carolina Panthers +3.5 at home versus the New Orleans Saints in that one. So our 5 mutuals: Dallas, San Diego Chargers over 55, Atlanta +12, Arizona -3 in the first half, Carolina +3.5, and the Buffalo Bills first half at -2.5 as our 5 mutuals. So that's our 5 mutuals. Now we'll get into our picks.
The real deal.
For the week. I have 9 picks on the week. So what are you going with this week?
I have to count these out. I have so many. I think I have 8.
8 picks.
I think.
You're going big this week. A little big like me. All right, I'll start out, and I'll start out in this Los Angeles Rams Indianapolis Colts game. I'm going with the Colts as a home dog +3.5 in this one. This is more a play on that number. I think the Colts losing 2 straight games at home with a plus in this one, I think is pretty good value here. So I'm going to ride the Colts +3.5 at home to start things out in my picks.
Okay, well, to start off, I have 2 picks on the same game, so I'm just going to go ahead and give both of them. I've got the Bills at -3.5, and I'm also taking the 2.5 halftime line.
All right, Bills, game and first half. So very heavy in Bills stock this week versus the Miami Dolphins. All right, if we're going to do twofers, you're going to like this twofer. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Bucks, first half line of -7. And then I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons, game line of +12. So I have Bucks -7 in the first half, Falcons +12. What could go wrong here other than the Falcons can cost me in 2 ways in this valuable game? So Falcons +12, Bucks plus the first half -7 for me on my 2-in-1 game.
Okay, so for my next one, I'm actually going to take the San Francisco at -2.5 for the first half.
All right, San Francisco First half -2.5. You think the Niners get off to a pretty hot start here versus Philadelphia and continue rolling on things here. All right, my next one. You're going to like this one. We're going to return to the Big Apple. We're taking the New York Jets plus a 6 over the New England Patriots. Yes, it's a rookie quarterback versus Bill Belichick, but I want to see this New England Patriots team score enough points to cover a 6-point line. I'm riding Zach Wilson and the Jets plus a 6 in this one.
That's very gutsy of you. Let's see.
Yes,
For my next one, I am going to take another twofer here. I'm going to take Arizona for the game at 3.5, and I'm also going to take the first half at -3.
All right, a twofer, double twofers for the Achilles reign here. A lot of action in the Bills and Arizona game. 3.5 and 3, first half and game line. Next up for me, I'm going to ride the Las Vegas Raiders plus the 6.5 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Teams with no offense and 6-point spreads. I'm taking the other side of that, much like in the New England game. I'm taking the Raiders plus 6.5 in this one.
I kind of like that, but not that much. Let's see. My next one, I am taking, where's it at? There it is. I am taking the over in the Dallas Chargers game at 55.
All right. Dallas Chargers over 55 for Achilles reign in that one. That's also one of our mutual picks. So double the action in the Dallas Chargers game. Next up for me, I'm taking the Carolina Panthers plus the 3.5 over the New Orleans Saints. Really like a home dog here in Carolina. I think they're still a bit undervalued. So I like that value on that plus 3.5 line there.
I hope you're ready for this.
All right. More twofers.
Yeah, I got another twofer for you. So for my next pick, I've got Seattle at 3.5 for the first half.
All right.
And then I also have the game line on that one.
All right. Another two for Seattle. 3.5 first half, 6 for the game. All right. Speaking of that game, we're going to be in a little bit of a battle here because I have the Tennessee Titans plus 6 in that game. Me and Dynamite, solid with our Triton love here. So,
you're getting ready for that Saturday college football game, aren't you?
All right, I'm riding the Titans here. I think that's a little bit of an overreaction to last week's game. So I'm going Titans plus the 6 here.
Okay, and for my last pick, I am going with Kansas City at -2.5 for the first half.
All right, KC -2.5 for the first half versus the Baltimore Ravens. All right, I got 2 more picks left. The Arizona Cardinals minus the 3 in the first half. I have that one as well along with you. That's also one of our mutuals. So a lot of love for the Arizona Cardinals in that game. And then lastly, we're riding the Jacksonville Jaguars plus the 6 this week over the Denver Broncos. I think the Denver Broncos can't handle the 2-week road trip here. I think Jacksonville Jaguar looks a little better in week 2 than week 1. So we're taking that one. All right. Before we close out things here, the Washington New York Giants game. Washington came out on top by a point with a last-second field goal after missing the last-second field goal. And for some reason, the New York Giants lining up offsides on a last-second field goal. I thought that only happened in high school games, but apparently it happens
in the NFC East.
It happens in the NFC East, which possibly is the equivalent of high school games. I'm curious your take on these two teams. The offense looked okay for both teams. I'm really disappointed in the Washington football team's defense so far this year. And really, I just think both these teams are really, really poor. I don't think they quite equate to the quality. I'm a little bit more disappointed in Washington. I thought they'd make a little bit more of a leap this season, but I'm curious your thoughts on that game.
It's weird how, 1 week affects your way of thinking. So as of right now, I'm probably a little disappointed in the Washington defense. I felt like they were probably one of those defenses that I thought had the potential to be elite. And they really haven't shown it so far 2 weeks into the season. I am impressed with Heineke. I think that he showed some nice stuff. Not great, where it's going to completely dominate the news cycle, but I thought he did good enough to lead his team to victory. So that kind of impressed me. And as far as the Giants are concerned, I mean, I've said it a few times already, this season. I don't know why. I've got this little crush on the Giants' potential right now. Not so much the team, but the potential.
Well, it'd be nice if they won some games, however,
I know,
to
right?
show that potential. The only thing I worry about there is Barkley right now doesn't look right. You saw it on that run where he probably should have ended up going in for a touchdown. He bailed out and ran out of bounds. And then you mentioned the bad mistakes. They got that turnover from Heineke, and they probably should have closed that game out. Couldn't close it out. Washington drives down, kicks that field goal, misses, and you line up off sides. It just seems like both these teams are way too full of mistakes to really, really be a contender. They both seem to shoot themselves in the foot too much. I will agree. Even if Fitzpatrick comes back right now, I think Heineke probably should be the one leading that Washington football team.
You at least have some future with Heineke at the helm. Fitzpatrick, I mean, as talented as he is, and he's a character.
Yes,
he's more of a journeyman. He's not going to be in the foreseeable future for your franchise. So I think you stick with the guy that you could possibly build on.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, that wraps things up for week 2. Now we just have the games to get into. Be sure to like and subscribe so you get all our content. Winning Daily will have more picks and fantasy options as they come on NFL Sunday. You'll have a full slate of college football tomorrow on Winning Daily Show. You don't want to miss all that action. You don't want to miss our football time show for college football, preview and picks for that one. So like and subscribe. Achilles, where can we find you?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at TD Achilles. Yeah, whatever,
All right, that's our show, and we're out.